Ever notice how people problems can follow you from job to job, team to team, even company to company? I mean, the faces change, but the friction stays the same. In this video, I'm going to talk about why and exactly what you can do to break the cycle. I'm going to offer you my definition of people issues. People issues are any number of the occurring challenges or conflicts that arise because of interpersonal dynamics, unmet needs, and differing values within groups or within individuals. It really is a negative connotation, right? Think about it, people problems. What does that tell you subconsciously? What it tells you is that, well, it's because of people. It's because people are so fragile. It's because people are so flaky, and really encourages one to blame the other person or to look for fault or negative traits in another person. But you gotta realize that people issues, in other words, the challenges that arise between individuals or in groups, it doesn't come from bad personalities or bad luck or any number of drama. That's not the reason why. They arise because people necessarily have different values and different needs and different priorities. That's why, naturally, there will be problems and conflict. So it's not that it's the people that is the problem. Really, the underlying issue is a lack of understanding and followed by a lack of appreciation of these differences. Let's talk about the 6 principles, why these patterns exist and how to fix them. Principle number 1 is patterns persist until you address them. I once had a client who was in my mentorship, and she was a brilliant professional. She was in the tech industry, building software that traces inventory. That was her specialty. And she was really good at what she does. The problem was that when she looked at her resume, and I saw her resume as well, it could be very easily perceived as someone who is job hopping. You know, the concept of going from job to job and only being at each company for a short period of time, less than 2 years at each company. And I asked her, well, share with me, because I'm your coach, share with me what's going on. Why did you leave this company? Why did you leave that company? And we went through list by list on her resume, every company that she's been in less than 2 years, and she told me why she left. And I really saw a strong underlying theme of the reason why she left. It was people problems. It was her direct manager didn't meet her promises. Her skip level boss was really difficult to work with. She called it a hard personality. It was her team members. She had teams of direct reports that were sort of dotted line reporting to her, but not directly reporting to her. And a lot of them were underperforming and they didn't listen. So you see, it was the underlying issue of people issues. And she noticed that no matter what company she went to, and she changed her industry slightly as well, that these people issues were always there. And she felt like, I don't know what to do. These just keep following me. Again, like I mentioned before, the faces change, but the friction remains the same. Anything you don't face, you are disempowered, and that disempowerment follows you. So I always say that people problems are signals. They are signals of something you did not address. They are a feedback mechanism to show you something, an opportunity that you need to lean into for personal growth and development. Now, you might say, well, how do I address this? Because I can't change another person. I can't get them to like me, or I can't change their personality. It's not about that. Fixing people problems is not about fixing another person, because I'm here to tell you it's true. You cannot fix another person. You cannot change another person. So what can you do? Think about this. What can you address? The only thing you can address are 3 things: your perceptions, your decisions, your actions. Those are the only thing you can address. So when it comes to, well, what about that? What can I do about my perceptions and my actions to fix people problems for good, right? Because you don't want them to follow you in the next opportunity or in the next team. And this is where you got to look at, well, what patterns are you noticing? For example, do you find yourself consistently avoiding tough conversations or a specific type of conversations? Or, for example, do you find yourself always having difficulty setting boundaries? Or do you find yourself always not knowing how, and you're avoiding to address dysfunctional behaviors on teams? Or is there a pattern like that? You got to notice this in yourself, your own behaviors. Because if you are disempowered, for example, in the area of needing to address difficult behaviors, then those difficult behaviors will follow you around. Wherever you are disempowered, the world around you is going to give you feedback on something you have not addressed yet inside of you. It's not about fixing somebody else or trying to change them, because you can't do that. The only thing you can change is yourself and those 3 areas. And once you do that, then you really address the root cause of it. Because remember, people issues is interdynamics, interpersonal dynamics, unmet needs, differences in values, differences in priorities. So if you can change those within you, because that's the only thing you have control over, then when you make that shift, the way you show up, the way you understand the situation, the larger situation, the way you appreciate the other person changes, and you address the root cause of people problems. Let's move on to principle number 2. Your boundaries set the standard. The way that other people treat you is going to be according to the boundaries you set or the boundaries you do not set. You see, weak or unclear boundaries invite the way people treat you or the way people behave around you. You got to understand that boundaries are not walls that you create between people. They are standards of engagement. And if you're not setting boundaries, or if you are setting boundaries, but they're open to interpretation and misinterpretation, then you miss an opportunity to create very healthy standards of engagement. Now, when it comes to setting boundaries, now I don't mean telling people what to do or telling people what not to do. It's not about that, because remember, you can't control other people. And if you're telling people what to do and not to do, you are not treating them as your equals, and people sense that unfairness, or they sense that level of patronization. Some people can perceive it that way. When I talk about setting boundaries, what I'm talking about is setting clear boundaries in 5 different areas. And when I say clear, I mean boundaries that are easy to understand and impossible to misunderstand. And you're doing this for engagement, not for telling them what's off limits or patronizing them that they should do this and shouldn't do that. It's not about that. So here are the 5 areas of boundaries to set. And they are, I'll just tell them to you right now, they are physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, intellectual boundaries, cultural boundaries, and financial boundaries. 5 key boundaries to set. Now, I want to continue with the principles. So I'm going to talk more about what do these 5 boundaries mean at the end of this video. Principle number 3, values dictate interactions. You got to understand the essence of human psychology and human behavior. And here's what it is in a nutshell. It is that every individual, whether they are at your work or in your personal life, every individual is going to make decisions and behave according to a set hierarchy of values. Now, everyone has a hierarchy of values, even you do. Things that you deem the most important in your life, non-negotiable, all the way to something that's not important at all, and it is the least priority. We all have a hierarchy like this, and so do the people you work with. And you got to understand that this is the essence of human behavior. Why do people do what they do? Don't expect people to operate any other way. So if you are working with your boss, and let's say your boss values efficiency and saving of costs, but meanwhile, you value creativity and exercising greater autonomy, then can you see how conflict is inevitable? Because there are differences in values and differences in needs, and therefore differences in priority. So conflict is inevitable, right? Let me give you another example. Let's say you're working with your higher up, a skip level manager, and your skip level manager, of course, is the boss of your direct manager, and your skip level manager, he or she values documented processes, right? Because, trust the process. We got to create processes. Processes exist for a reason. But in the meantime, you value creativity and autonomy, right? Can you see then how conflict is inevitable as well in this example, right? So you see, in every idea you propose, in every interaction that you have, these values are being adhered to in the background. And in the moment you expect someone else to behave in any other way, then you're going to set yourself up for disappointment and anxiety and maybe even anger and resentment. So instead, remember, you can't change them. You cannot change their values, and you cannot try to convince them otherwise, because it's part of one's identity. Think about someone trying to change you and trying to tell you that's not important when you know that it is. Well, how does that feel? So it's not about trying to change them. It's about really understanding and therefore appreciating why they do what they do. You may not agree with it, but you can still appreciate it, like genuinely appreciate it. That's why understanding is only the first step. It has to move to appreciation. You can understand someone's values. You can understand them cognitively or intellectually, but you can still not appreciate it. So when you understand and don't appreciate, your communications are unequal and you can't create fair exchange, and there's still conflict. It's important to have both understanding and appreciation. So this is where you got to seek to understand, well, what might their values look like? What does the structure of their values look like? And well, how different it is from mine. What does mine look like? And then start to appreciate those differences, not just see them and understand them intellectually, but genuinely appreciate them. And then when you do, now you can show up in front of this person and then communicate in the language of their values and watch what happens. When people feel appreciated and understood, things start to change. The conflict dissolves, the emotion volatility dissolves, and now you can create fair exchange. If people issues are costing you your next promotional opportunity, or if they are causing you to go from company to company, team to team, and they're following you around, then I invite you to invest in looking at how you can break that cycle. Below this video, you will find a link. When you click that link, you're going to see several different options to work with me. You can choose self-study, you can choose a little bit of interaction, or you can choose a full coaching and mentorship. It's up to you. Depending on your preference and style of learning and style of coaching, choose what works best for you, but do it now. Because the longer you wait for people issues to resolve, they don't resolve on their own. It's important to understand how to navigate this level of complexity, but when you do, you will have the cohesion and the advancement you desire in your career. So click the link below the video now, explore your options, and get started. Now let's move on to principle number 4. Unspoken needs become unmet needs. A lot of people issues are really a disguise of unmet needs. If you do not speak your needs, other people will not understand you. And unspoken needs cause unspoken resentment and unspoken judgment. Right? Think about it. Think about a time where in the workplace, there was somebody that you worked closely with and they really didn't understand you. And the actions they took, the things that they said and did were really upsetting for you, really creating a lot of anger and upsetting to you. Think about a time where that happened, right? And in that moment, it feels like, well, they didn't understand you and there were certain needs that you have that never got met. It could be a need for them to communicate more clearly. It could be a need for them to loop you in on certain things before making a decision, right? And this is really important to communicate needs, because whatever needs that you have that you didn't communicate is a open, fertile soil, open, fertile ground for the potential of people issues. And it's really easy in those moments where we feel misunderstood or our needs are not being met. It's really easy in that moment to blame the other person. It's really easy to look at that other person and say, well, they are just thoughtless. They are very unprofessional, or they really don't know how to behave in a team dynamic. It's easy to say that. And whenever there is judgment, it creates even more difficulty and an even higher barrier to understand and appreciate the other person. And you got to understand that behind every judgment is an unmet need, yours and theirs included. So before we go into a relationship with another person, before we start a project, or before we go into any new endeavor, it is important to have transparent conversation. Now, expressing a need is a little bit different from setting a boundary. Setting a need, sharing a need is very different from that, because setting a need sometimes can cause one person to feel very vulnerable. But that's the thing. Vulnerability in the workplace, sometimes it feels like you don't bring your personal stuff into the professional workspace. But I submit to you that if you don't embrace that, and as a result of that, you don't share what you need, you can't expect people to know how to behave around you or what decisions to make that are aligned with something you can accept. And as a result of that, you really do miss out on opportunities for meaningfulness and collaboration, because clearly expressing one's needs is a way to turn confusion into collaboration. Principle number 5, the law of complementary opposites. You got to see that teams and companies thrive on opposite traits. You have individuals within the same team, some who are big picture thinkers, and then others who are process-oriented people. You have some who are very process-driven and others who are more autonomous. You have individuals who are analytical and scientific even, and then others who are more freedom thinking and more artistic. The sooner you embrace these, the sooner you create meaningfulness in your relationships. The more you resist these opposites, especially the ones that are opposite from you, the more you resist it, Resistance creates instability. I have a client that actually I'm still working with him, and he comes from a academic history, a professor turned into an executive director at a big tech company. And he reports directly to the CEO. When he and I first working together, his biggest opportunity for growth, and he knew it too, was navigating his relationship with the CEO. And it was exactly one of those polar opposites kind of thing. The CEO likes to come down into the weeds and roll his sleeves up and do all the tactical work and really likes to control the way things are done. Whereas he, my client, is more of the big picture thinker and feels like there needs to be a separation between the higher level executives and the implementers in the lower levels of leadership. And they were opposites in so many different ways. And what made it so difficult for him, for my client, was that whenever it came to speaking to his boss about these opposites and trying to get buy-in, it was consistently met with resistance, and boom, the door would close and the conversation would just stop in its tracks. And the shift came when I helped him to see and embrace the complementary opposites, because he had been resisting these opposites for a long time. And the more he resisted it, the more it created distance between him and the CEO. The more it created a lot of drama within the teams and other executive directors. The more it created delays in terms of project completion. You see, resistance creates instability. But the moment he was able to turn that around and embrace the differences, the complementary opposites, then it creates stability and collaboration. It also invites understanding and appreciation. So this is where it's important for you in your organization right now to start to map out these complementary opposites. Who are they? Who are they with? And how does it serve you? How is it different? What are the advantages of that? And learn to truly and genuinely embrace them, not just intellectually or cognitively, not just an analytical exercise, but it's got to move to emotional. It's got to move to your heart, a genuine appreciation. When you do that, you move from instability, unstable in business growth, instability in team dynamics. There could be instability in terms of productivity. All sorts of instability could exist. You go away from instability, you move towards creating greater sustainable stability. And principle number 6, growth requires ownership and not blame. It's easy to blame other people, and that blame comes from a place of not understanding human psychology and not understanding the essence of why people do what they do. But the moment you take ownership of your part, however small, then you get to gain the power to influence change. Now, go back to the example of the client I talked about earlier in terms of his relationship with the CEO. When there was conflict, when there was clashing, it really got heated. The discussion started getting heated. I mean, a third-party observer might say they argue all the time. But the minute he took ownership of his part, my client took ownership of his part, however small, that conflict that was once heated, even in the moment that was once heated and voices going louder, people talking faster, that kind of dynamic, it just dissolves. You can see it melting away. You can see the other person's body language change. You can see their shields getting lowered. You can see their body language open and receptive of you and the dynamic and the relationship. You can see that completely change, and it happens instantly. So instead of thinking, like shift from that thinking, and it's easy to think this way, shift from thinking, well, whose fault is this? Or who am I, who's the blame? Shift from that to thinking, well, what part did I play in this? How did I contribute to this dynamic? Shift to that, and you will see how that creates the leverage of transformation. You see, addressing people issues and challenges, interpersonal challenges, requires a tremendous amount of self-awareness, awareness of the environment around us, and a willingness to understand and appreciate others more than just at the surface level. But when you do this, you get to create opportunities at every interaction to have meaningful engagement, constructive and productive interactions, and also to be able to have the influence you want to have so that you can advance yourself as well and create a fair exchange. Now, I promised you that I would go deep into the 5 types of boundaries that you can set in the workplace. Now, I created a whole video about these 5 boundaries. That video is coming right up next. I'll see you there.